This is former Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champion, the star of the Wrestling Road Diaries, and current NWA Power Superstar, your pal, Sal Renaro, and you're listening to my good buddy Stu's Wrestling Podcast. Man, if I had a really cool catchphrase, I'd say it right now.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer.
Welcome back. I've missed you all. I tell you, having these little week breaks now, obviously not doing 4 episodes a month. This is the new way we're doing it on Stu's Wrestling Podcast. So yeah, between 2 to 3 episodes of the show a month now. Just going forward, just wanted to say in this intro, I wanted to let you all know what's happening. We've got other stuff going on. I'm doing an MMA and boxing show now with my cousin, Powered for happily having us on there, and Rich and John have been doing all the editing stuff on the live on StreamYard, so we're really happy with that. Anyway, let's get to this week's episode, and we travelled to Ohio this week to see the Bachelor, Benjamin Boone. Bachelor has been a wrestler for 14 years. We talk about the Bachelor gimmick and how that came to be. We talk about him training the stars of tomorrow with Trey Miguel and Crimson at Skull and Bones. We get into matches that he's had, some of his favourite matches as a fan. So from WWE, WCW, you get to hear all this and more this week with the Bachelor, Benjamin Boone, on Stu's Wrestling Podcast for episode 78. Enjoy. My guest, all the way from Toledo, Ohio, it is the Bachelor, Benjamin Boone, a 14-year pro in wrestling too, Ben. I've got to get that in.
Oh, man, thank you for including that. Reminding me that I've been doing this a little bit way too long, but you're so kind.
that number of years in the business, man, that's incredible. That's, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people come and go during that time with shorter careers and stuff. So that's testament to you, man. Absolutely.
Thank you, man. And not only of the amount of people that have come and gone, that have joined, that have stayed, that have gone on to bigger and better things. Really the business has radically shifted in the 14 years. So when I started, I actually trained later in 2006, had my first match in April 2007. So we are coming up on the 14th anniversary of it. The business was much different then. The mid 2000s, the products overall was not exactly hot, WWE, obviously the big game in town, Impact, was starting to hit their stride. But other than that, man, I mean, like the independents, I remember even where I trained at Cleveland All Pro, I mean, they're very dependent on having the names come in to pack the house every month. Because otherwise, I mean, you'd be drawing probably 50 to 70 people. 100 people at an independent show, back when I started, I think that was considered, a pretty good house. Nowadays, let's remove COVID from the equation. 100 people, I mean, people would be saying, "Hey, man, what happened? Was there a baseball game that was going on?" Like, like the 100 number, or the 100 is a much different number now than it did back then. But really, like when I started too, and I'm so sorry to take over this initial thing and go on this long rant,
it's about you,
where I started in Cleveland All Pro Wrestling. I mean, there's still a lot of hidden gems. You can find them on YouTube. I'm good friends with Gregory Iron. He's uploaded on the Iron on Wrestling YouTube channel. There's a triple threat match, for example, of Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli, and Bryan Danielson, and Christopher Daniels, a triple threat from 2006, I believe. That tells you about the time frame that we are in, and all those guys are on great platforms now. And they were revered back then too. And matches like Rhino versus Bonnie Brown, and also like some weird collection of matches too. Like one, I love to show people, in the business. Lord Zoltan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a longtime journeyman wrestler. Many, many, many decades. He wears like face paint. Very creepy, macabre, and all that. And Honky Tonk Man. Brother, man, like if you want to see some true Memphis, you watch that match. I think there was not even any bumps in that match. It was incredible.
That's what a vast repertoire of guys that is, though. When you're talking about Cesaro, Claudio, Daniel Bryan. Now you saw them at an independent level. Could you have foreseen how successful they were going to go on to be in the mainstream of wrestling?
Even at that point, like now, I mean, I'm not even in the business training yet. I'm there as a ticket buying fan, seeing that, and you could just tell, even if you don't have like that sharp, nuanced, mechanics in your brain, of like, okay, he's gonna do this, like you just know that they were a cut above. And seeing them in action, it just blew my mind, and that gives inspiration for somebody like myself and other people. It's like, oh, like that's where I want to be. And that really, man, like all those guys have been well traveled, and that's something that I address to anybody younger in the business, people like at Skull and Bones, one of the assistant trainers there, that's something that we always make sure to tell younger people. You have to go out and travel. That's how you get better as a performer. WWE, AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, they're not going to come to your local hometown and knock on your door. You have to get out of your town. You have to hit the roads. You have to fly to learn your craft and work with as many people as possible. Learn as many styles as you can, and really become fine and nuanced. That's really the key. Also reliability. Don't be a piece of crap.
How was it? How was it when you went into training when you first started? How tough was it for you, or did it all come pretty easy to you?
Man, like I really like that you gave that little nugget of optimism. Like, oh, did it come easy? Hell no, it did not come easy for me. I did not play any sports growing up. I did acting and theater when I was younger. So when it came to like that side of the business, cool. That came a little bit easier than the actual physicality of the business. Something I should have paid more attention to, but that's all right. So let me lay out how our initial training school was. So I trained at Cleveland All Pro Wrestling in the middle of Cleveland, Ohio, not in a very safe area of Cleveland. Matter of fact, the building, Turner's Hall, which has been a beacon for independent wrestling for many years, for Cleveland All Pro and Absolute Intense Wrestling. I believe it was an old like elementary school building. Like it hosted bingo. That was the big draw there. And our ring was in the basement of this building. So, Stu, I cannot emphasize of how tightly cramped that this basement was. The ring barely fit in the room. We could only hit the ropes one side, because if you ran the ropes the other way, you hit the wall. So it was a very, very tight fit. And not only that, the ring had seen better days. So the ring should be pretty leveled like this. There was a dip just like this in the middle of the ring, duct tape on the canvas all around. Not the most ideal ring, I will say that. That being said, the first day was very hard. Learning to run the ropes. I remember specifically thinking, running the ropes, that's got to be easy. I can do that. Yeah, probably 2 times that I hit, I was sucking wind easily. And when it came to bumping, I think for 99% of people that come into the wrestling business, your first bump will suck. You know, I'm not just talking about like how it feels, but the form, because your body is not made to fall down. It just isn't. So that there is a secret art and technique to learning how to fall, spread your limbs out, you know, just to make sure that the whole body absorbs the impact and that you don't get hurt, tucking your chin, all that good stuff. My first day just mostly consisted of learning how to bump, running the ropes, and hitting the turnbuckles too. So I think the whole day maybe lasted 2 or 3 hours, but I wanted to puke at the end. You know, there are other schools that have more intensive training drills and things like that. Thank God JT Lightning didn't put us through that, because I think I would have been worse for wear, even more worse for wear at that point.
I bet you wouldn't have traded it for the world, though. Training there, by the sounds of it, you know, is the way it was. Do you remember it with fondness being there at that venue?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, like, even though it was so hard, it was. I think of it so well, and because I mean that's your beginning, man. That's how I got started, was through that, and I appreciate the fact that my initial training school was a dump, you know, because it made me appreciate where I would go from there, from different venues, different buildings, different promotions, working with different people. You know, in essence, it was a very humbling start to begin with, you know, and also too, like I mean, that's how I met Gregory Iron. You know, he's become a good friend. You know, Johnny Gargano, he took over training when JT left. And Johnny, you know, he's like a year or two younger than me, but I mean, he's a much better wrestler than I am. You know what I mean? So even at that point, so him leading things and dispensing his knowledge was wonderful. And then, you know, seeing younger, you know, people that we know now, you know, guys like, you know, like Bobby Beverly, the Bev, and 440, for example. You know, it was a great way to make those connections and get my feet wet in the business. And also too, it's something that I tell people. I live in Toledo, Ohio, and drove to Cleveland, so that's about a 2-hour drive one way. So, and I was doing that twice a week.
Incredible dedication.
You know, like, oh, thanks. You know, like I just knew, because I don't think that there was a school in my hometown at that point. You know, and thank God now that, you know, Skull and Bones is up and running, just past its first year anniversary. You know, and has become people now come there to train. You know. And, you know, even guys like Alex Shelley, you know, he stops by there once a week to work with, you know, Trey Miguel and other up and coming individuals. We just had JT Davidson, the Iron Manager, for OI4K. Now he's there to help out when he can. But anyways, I know I'm going on so many different tangents, and you know,
it's fine
here. But doing those drives, you know, for me, it was a very conscious decision, knowing that I would have to travel to wrestle. So it was my way of conditioning myself to do drives back and forth and not have it be taxing. Because some people, when they get into business, they get allergic to bumps and hitting the ropes and all that. Other people, they're allergic to the travel. So, you know, was not physically, you know, gifted, got myself there, but, you know, I took steps to ensure to get better. Then years later, I got touched up at the Can-Am school in Windsor, Ontario. At that point, was run by Tyson Dukes. You know, still run by, you know, Scott D'Amore of Impact Wrestling. And I really credit them for really sharpening my skills, worked on my footwork, all that good stuff that, you know, once I was getting out there, I needed to get to that next level. So even though I trained at one place, I went to another. I think that's also very crucial for anybody in the business. Just because you started at one place doesn't mean that you should be totally married to there. Go to other places and learn what you can. You know, whether it's the Can-Am, Also Truth, Windows Open, the Lance Storm Academy, you know, Skull and Bones, wherever you go, you know, pick and choose. You know, that's the beautiful part about professional wrestling, is that there's all sorts of different nuances, different ways to learn things, but it makes the picture complete in a way. So.
That's incredible. Be as independent as you are for the different promotions, and do that in training. That's what I take away from that. When was the first match? What was the time frame from training to the first match? Now this differs from guy to guy. I've heard like straight away. I've heard 18 months, 2 years until a first match. So for you personally, when was that first bout?
So I began training, it was September 2006, and my first match was April 15th. So, it was about 7 months from my first match. And my first match was a tag team battle royal. There were actually 2 that night. So Cleveland All Pro, they filmed for TV for a local sports station called Sports Time Ohio, which coincidentally was part of sports packages nationwide in the United States. So very quickly, when Cleveland All Pro broke away and Pro Wrestling Ohio came on, I was getting messages from people across the United States of, fans watching our products, which blew my mind. But anyhow, there was a situation, I think that that there were two tag team battle royals because the tag belts were vacated, and the winners of those 2 would face each other for the Cleveland All Pro belt. It basically took after, I don't know if you remember, the day after WrestleMania 23, John Cena and Shawn Michaels were the tag champions, and they defended their titles in a tag team battle royal, all that good stuff. JT took it straight from that. It was also, it was a good way to, throw a bunch of guys in the ring. And, I'll never forget, I really didn't have a developed name at that point yet. It was actually, I think, a month or 2 before when coming up with the name, Johnny Gargano asked, like, hey, what's a name that you want to use? And I said, I had this idea at first of like Blade or Blaze, because I'm a big fan of alliteration. But there are so many wrestlers with the last name Blade and Blaze, that he said, like, no, don't do that. And in figuring out like a persona or whatever, I was much heavier at this point. I was about 275, 280 at this point in my life, and thought about doing like more of like a comedic, asshole-ish type of character, like this jock type character, fat jock, I should say. And I asked Gargano, who the most obnoxious person in his school, what his name was. And he said his last name was Boone. I'm like, there it is. Okay. So that worked. So then, when JT was going around pulling whoever was there, all the extras for this battle royal, JT asked me, dude, that's how he talked, dude, but what's your name? And I just said, I don't know, big. I used Benny at the time, Benny Boone, and he's like, that's fucking stupid, and walks off. But he used it.
Hey, that's it, man.
And Boone stuck with me since, and that's fine. I love it. But yeah, so the first match, I was tagged up with a gentleman named Big Time Billy Taylor. And we did the battle royal. The rules were if your partner was eliminated, then the team was out. My guy was thrown out, I think, maybe a minute or 2 in the match, but they kept me in because all the vets knew. This is the young kid. We got to give him the chops. We got to haze him. So I got all the chops on my chest. There's a wrestler named Super Oprah that did the stink face. All that good stuff, as a welcome to the business type of a welcome. But I was so excited, that I had the chance to come into the ring and do my match. Oh, and before I forget too, I have to paint you the picture of what I wore for my first match. Or should I say my lack of gear? Because again, this is something, for young students too. If you know that you're going to have a match coming up or training to have a match in the future, have gear. I had a athletic tank top, a Tommy Hilfiger tank top. I had workout pants that were like green and silver that my brother gave to me. I wore kick pads that I bought at the local martial arts store, and shoes. So I looked like a very much like a Yarder Spirit Squad member.
That's quite a painting without a photo. If we can find a photo of that when we put this out, I'd gladly use that. I tell you.
You might have to dig deep in the rabbit hole of YouTube for that match. I don't even know if it's uploaded yet, but and if you find it, please upload it.
you know who'd appreciate that? Justin Clapper, our friend from Wrestling Travel. He'd appreciate it if you saw that photo, absolutely. How was it developing the moves and your move set early on? I know move sets change with guys over years. Did you stick to those moves that you've used from the start?
I would say mostly yes. One of the moves that I do, I run the ropes, jump up and down and do a splash. It's a pretty typical move. I've always, even at the start of my career when I was much heavier, I've always been pretty flexible. So instead of having my body, just be flat like this, I was able to do it in a bit of a U shape. So it looks visually impressive. I first did that in a match, and Gargano said like for me to keep it in my repertoire. And then other things, I've developed here and I've left out. When I tagged with Nate Matson as the Sons of Michigan tag team, I very, very much would revolve moves around like the palm strike, because of the Michigan deal. I don't do that much anymore. It doesn't really fit with what I do now. And then other moves and spots I've developed, especially the past couple of years, that would fit more with my Bachelor persona. Because if I'm a Bachelor, I would fight a different way than, let's say, a Stone Cold Steve Austin, a Trey Miguel, a Madman Fulton, all those type of guys. So it's a gradual process. But yeah, some I've left out, and some I've left out, I could certainly teach, for somebody if they wanted to use it, if they wanted to steal it, and others I've picked up along the way. One I actually learned from Joey Legend, who I've become very close to over the years. With him being world traveled and everything, he showed us some World of Sport type of spots. One he showed me of trapping a guy with my legs while I'm laying on the ground and essentially doing a handstand up and the guy taking a flip bump. So it's basically like I'm doing a laying down hurricanrana. I call it a lazy rana. I've been able to implement that, in my moveset, because it looked cute, but also nobody does it. And plus two, I'm not going to do a reverse rana or anything crazy, like that. So, and that's, to go into that aspect too of watching older wrestling, and especially the older World of Sport shows as well, to pick up, move ideas or even spots with chain and all that.
So I tell you what, it was a staple over here on television for so many years. That was the go-to thing to watch on a Saturday here. But you know what I like about it? I like how you guys in America speak with fondness about World of Sport. That's incredible to hear from workers, wrestlers, absolutely. And it's testament to what they were doing over there.
Oh, 100%, and, for somebody of my generation that, discovered it, right in the advent of YouTube and, guys like Cole Cabana and everybody that, was a great fan of World of Sport, implemented it into his character persona, his moveset, and making it more, mainstream. It's absolutely great to see. And I think too, with even fans younger, you saw bits and pieces of it, with, Davey Boy Smith and, Dynamite Kid. They brought, a couple of those, aspects of their work to the WWF, to Japan and all that. Which, it goes to show you too, of like, those influences have to be traced back to somewhere, and once you find that main source of inspiration, it's like unlocking like a treasure trove of just knowledge. I'm like, oh man, how have I never seen this before? Certainly for kids like me that grew up, watching WWF superstars and things like that. Like I can only imagine what it was like for you, You have to tell me what channel it aired on over in the UK, but I mean it's Channel 4. Is that
it was ITV, which would be known over here as Channel 3 when it was just terrestrial. Satellite was coming through in the late 80s, but we had, when I was a kid starting watching television, you had your 4 channels. So everything you saw, but you'd get WCW in the 90s. So we'd get Worldwide every week. I'd have to watch superstars like yourself at my cousin's house, and then Raw coming in 93. But it was a better time. I preferred that time because you only have the 4 channels per se over here, and I prefer it. I just don't like all these channels now. I know the internet age changed stuff, but that was a better time to me. Because you didn't have as much stuff, and a lot more people watched it because you didn't have all those channels.
Yeah, and I think you touched upon something really, really interesting there. Of now we live in this day and age of the internet where we have so much access to different channels, different promotions, not just top companies, but also the independents. That it can be overwhelming. They can choose of what to watch and everything. But yeah, certainly, like growing up, we had that fondness of, like in your case, the 4 channels, you were able to watch not only World of Sport, but you're also able to find, Worldwide, go to your friend's house to watch superstars. You guys got WWF pay-per-views for free, damn it. So
for many years. And this is why I wasn't disgruntled. We get charged, should I say, get my words mixed up here. We pay £9.99 in sterling to your US, which was $9.99. I know now you can do it with Peacock for $4.99 with the adverts. And I just say to people, look how many years the Americans had to pay for the events. And it wasn't until 97, I think 98, we started getting charged on box office. So we were lucky, man. I wasn't disgruntled paying because I said the Americans were paying God knows what for pay-per-view at the time.
And not only that too, but you had the UK pay-per-views.
Oh my!
And Capital May, and all that stuff that we would see the highlights of on Raw or whatever, but then it would be released on home video and DVD, in a couple months, and it was essentially a house show of event, but still so cool to be able to see oh man, this happened over there, and I have to wait to buy it. But there's some great gems of matches on there. Some stinkers, of course. I think wasn't it? I think over there, I think it was in '98 that one of the UK pay-per-views, Jacqueline. She got her pop topped off. Her pop top. Oh God. Top popped off, hard for me to say, and her breasts were just out, I think it was through a spot or whatever. I mean, you could never do that today, but I mean, it spoke to the volume of where the business was at that point, so, and then, certainly I think during the Invasion era, you had I want to say there was a WWF championship versus WCW championship title versus title cage match. I think it was. I think it was Jericho and Steve Austin. I think
I think it would have been Rebellion when they brought, because we obviously we had Rebellion for a while. Then they obviously more latterly they went into Insurrection. I was only speaking to Just Incredible last week for an interview, and we did. I know it's been dissected to the nines, but we spoke about the plane ride from hell in 2002 when they were coming back over. I couldn't. then I could not speak to him about that. I said, I know. I said, I've seen hundreds of interviews of you with X-Pac talking about it, but it's just him, like a visual in our minds, him wheeling Scott Hall through the terminal building because he's absolutely paralytic. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Just crazy too. And I think that was like one of the last UK pay-per-views they did.
I think 2003 might have been the last one where it was and then we did then what they did was they do Raw, but obviously it'd be pre-taped and then put out later on. So yeah, I went to Raw in Birmingham, which is in the Midlands, which is like 2.5 hours away from here. So went to watch Raw live, and Christian was still with Tomko, and they put him up against Batista. Christian was so over in the UK, It was like prior to him going to TNA in 2006, obviously, but he was over, man. They could have put the belt on him. I'm sure of that, because you could just tell by the reaction. It was crazy. It was crazy in there that night, and Batista was the face, but people wanted Christian, man. They absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely, and I think that was a sign of things to come too, because I mean that's when Christian was really hitting his stride, like that late 2004-05 era. He jumped to TNA and then he came back, So it's and interesting of him to go to AEW now. Christian's always been like a huge constant of how he's always been really good, especially with his character and his mic work and everything. And it's a shame that like in the WWE he only had a couple of brief world title runs, and I think that's just more due to circumstance and more than anything. He had a great run as NWA champion in Impact. So I'm very anxious to see of where what he's gonna do in AEW now that he's there.
And also just more recently, Booker T came out and said about him being one of the most underrated talents ever. And I agree. And that's coming from Booker T. And, I'm sure Christian doesn't look at it like that. He's been successful, but it was nice to hear Booker T about him. As you say, it was just the title run. The title runs were brief, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, now that it's so crazy too, of all these people coming back after injuries that were deemed, career enders, with Christian with his concussions, Edge with his neck. It's so weird that we're having like this era, this Renaissance era of these great talents. We're seeing them again. And we thought like what happened to Shawn Michaels almost 20 years ago, of like that was like a once in a lifetime situation. Now it's becoming common, and I think that speaks to how like advanced of how things are in medicine, with sports athletes, with training, things like that. With Edge, that his career is cut off too soon. Christian, his career is cut off too soon. They have that second chance. Now we get to see of where things go.
It caught me by surprise though, because Christian was obviously in the Rumble a couple of months ago. So you'd be leading to believe they're going to use him in some capacity. So it did come out of left field, but then, you've seen Paul White, you've seen the Big Show go there. But as much as they're going to be on-air talents, it's going to be that consultancy basis for the younger guys, isn't it, as well? That wealth of knowledge. Yourself being a trainer, how do you think that will go? It's going to be amazing for those younger guys, having Christian and Paul White involved. The wealth of experience is unmatched.
Oh, sure, and it's only going to help improve AEW, because and that's what any promotion, any product needs. I mean, you need to have your wealth of new up and coming talents mixed in with those established veterans, both on screen and backstage too. Like in AEW's case, now they have, Paul White, they have Christian Cage, they've had Matt Hardy there. Chris Jericho was, the first, big name that crossed over. Cody Rhodes, but he runs the company. You know what I mean? And then people backstage like your Art Andersons, your Dean Malenkos that are there to help basically that help the new guys, with their game, because AEW is still a very young product, so it has time to develop and mature, and same thing with NXT, the guys there, like MSK, I spent years with them at Rockstar Pro on the independents, now they're getting the highlight and spotlight they deserve, but they're backstage and they're surrounded by a wealth of knowledge, not only at NXT, but also at the PC. I mean, for God's sakes, Shawn Michaels is there, as a coach. I mean, and most would agree that he is the best well-rounded talent of all time. So, you could probably learn a thing or two from old HBK.
I think there's a lot of negativity about the product. I'm not about that as a fan. I see split opinion with AEW. I really do. I love it, but people they maintain they're not going to be like WWE, and they bring comments out about WWE and the way it's run. But then people are seeing similarities with AEW and what's being put on screen every week. But I think that's unjust. I think they are trying, and as you say, as you've alluded to, they're still in their infancy as a product, AEW. I think it's unfair. That they're criticised, but that's the way of the world. That's not just wrestling. That's everything. Everyone's given a forum, rightly or wrongly.
And not only that too, but when AEW first launched on TNT, they had crowds, and then a few months later, crowds were no more. So most of the time that they've been on television, they've been doing it without packed arenas. They're still figuring things out on the go. I mean, and WWE had to do that, with doing Friday Night SmackDown a year ago, with no fans, and then it developed from empty arena shows to the Thunderdome. So it's been trial and error. I mean, even an established company like WWE, I mean, it took time for them to figure out how can we have a show on television without fans and have it be engaging and entertaining, And like I had a buddy of mine, it's like, oh well, they should have done Thunderdome from the start. Listen, you're given a day or two notice of SmackDown running without fans. You have WrestleMania 2 or 3 weeks later. What do you do? That's you're figuring out of pulling off the show first, and then you're learning things on the go. And when people look back in 5 years of last year's WrestleMania, I mean, it's going to be so much different to watch, but also it's going to be more of a case study more than anything else of how do you run a show without any fans. For some people, for a lot of the talents there, it's almost full circle of having their first matches in front of 10, 20, 30 people, and then you're on the biggest show in front of nobody. It's such a weird full circle moment that nobody would have called. But man, I forgot what the initial question was offhand. I just got off on this.
It's just how people. Everyone. Do you know what my problem is? The fans. I'm not going to berate the fans. There's a lot of brilliant fans out there. They're all experts. That's the problem, and that. It's not just wrestling. It's any sport, anything in entertainment. Well, I would have done this. I would have done that. But my argument is, you're not in that position in the first place. You couldn't write TV because the writers get berated. I think unjustly sometimes. At the end of the day, and these people still watch the product week in, week out. They slag it off. I just think to myself, don't watch it then. If you can't, if it's doing your head in so much, don't watch the show.
The whole concept of hate watching, I never got and understood, but I also think that it's developed into this pattern of you watch something to complain about it, because if you complain or do something negative, I mean, usually that gets a lot of attention. That's a lot of likes. That's not, that's not a social media thing. That's just a humanity thing. But I think that it's gotten out of control, and myself, when I log on to social media, I mean, I interact with people accounts that I want to interact with. If somebody wants to tweet at me and say that I suck, cool. That's your opinion. I'm not going to dwell on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But there are people that just it seems like they get off on the fact of, and they look forward to just interacting or just having arguments online, and I just don't get it. I don't understand it. And I guarantee you, 99.9% of these people that would say these things, behind a screen, would never say that to you to your face.
No,
would never.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Or they'll be nice to you, and then they'll say, like,
yeah.
Man, I saw Ben Boone at this show, and God, I hate his gear.
Yeah. I think it's the way it's society, I'm afraid. But as you say, I think just over your head, and like you say, it's great to be praised, but then if people want to be negative, be negative. But I think I find Twitter seems to be the worst, because there's a lot of issues with soccer over here, soccer players getting called out, and there's racism and things going on, and they'll find these people. I think out of all those social medias, Twitter seems to be the most toxic for it.
Absolutely. And not only that too, even with things that are heading towards like a positive direction, there are people that will leech off that and use it to try to benefit themselves, you know what I mean, rather than go towards a good cause, but I don't know. I mean, I think just with time, I'd like to think, because I like to look at things through an optimist lens, that things will calm and simmer down. I think it's just a sign of the times right now. We just have to ride the wave, and then just don't get caught up into it. You know what I mean? So
it's intensified through the pandemic. It's like you're seeing people for what they really are as well. But it's been crazy. Mr. Boone, I want to get back to you though and your career. So where outside of Ohio have you wrestled? I'm sure you've wrestled in various states over the years. And which states have you had the most fun in and traveling to and the road life?
Well, I mean, like states promotions wise, I mean, obviously in Ohio, like I really felt that I became a much better worker for places like Rockstar Pro Wrestling in the Dayton area. They were running shows every week, so it was every week you had a chance to have a match and learn your craft and perfect it. Having runs in AIW in Cleveland, AAW in the Chicago area with Gregory Iron as part of the Iron Curtain. And then, I over a year ago, I did a shot at Hood Slam in California. One of the most fun experiences I've ever had. And I cannot wait to go back. I cannot wait for them to run again. Man, I've states wise, I think I've wrestled about 15 or 16 states.
Wow.
Incredible. And some were only like one time. It was just like a passing through type of deal. I've had the majority of my experience as well in Canada, specifically in the Ontario area. Working like for like Border City Wrestling, places like that. I've done a few shows for like Smash Wrestling up there. Local independents, I did a lot of touring too. So being able to do that as well. For a time, a lot of people thought I was Canadian because I was there a lot, and people, it's when I began, I did the tag team with Nate Matson, Sons of Michigan. So people thought I was from Detroit. And then later on, people thought that I was Canadian. Most people don't think I'm from Ohio, which is funny. But I guess that's a testament though to me being traveled. I'd like to think, but I don't know, man. I mean, I do have a great fondness for Canada as well. Last year was the first year in 10 years that I was not able to cross the border and do a show because of the pandemic, obviously. So, and there's some things lined up there too, and speaking to other promotions in the UK too, of possibly doing a a tour there, just so much was shut down. But I'm not dwelling on that. I think that things are on pause. The pause button is about to be hit again. Things will be back in motion. They have been, that you can see in the United States with like GCW and other independents slowly opening up. I just had my first match in a few months in Wisconsin for Brew City Wrestling, another place that I love and being a part of. I was actually their world heavyweight champion there, and it is a verified world champion because Steve Corino held it and defended it overseas. So it is a world champion. So championship, excuse me. So that's a great place to go as well. But man, like the amount of people that they had there, and how well the fans behave. People just want to go back to normal. They want to live life again. Being stuck in their homes for the past year, the first week it's awesome. It's like oh man, it's like a snow day. It's like a snow week. But then after a while, I mean, there's nothing to do. You run out of things to do. Things manifest. You take to Twitter to tweet at Stewie. You suck. I don't like how you talk. Or just finding things to occupy your mind for the good and for the bad. So that's what I noticed. Going to Brew City is that fans, and it was a packed house too. Of what we can do. Obviously.
How many were there? How many were in attendance for that one?
I would say probably about maybe 100, 125.
That's for the moment with everything, that's still solid.
Still very solid, and the performers are still keeping safe and all that good stuff. But man, like that's when everyone's vaccinated or whatever the appropriate measures are taken, and we're allowed to live life again. I mean, show's going to be packed, and I'll love it. People will probably pop for like a big tackle, or something simple, because they're just going to be so excited to see live wrestling again. And like I said, you are seeing it in places here and there, but on the whole, because that's where it was a year ago. The independents were hot, white hot. And like what I was mentioning earlier of like the amount of people that were coming to shows. I mean, you're turning people away, and some of these places, they might not have, like the ex WWE, ex, Impacts, type of names or whatever. People are just wanting to see wrestling. That interactivity that makes professional wrestling so unique and so special. And that you're seeing, talents that will go on to bigger, better things, but you're seeing them in their infancy. Yeah, man, that's again, I'm going off on a
no. Tangent, carry on, man. That's what it's all about.
But yeah, man, that's really what it's about. And just there's only so much that you can do doing matches, taping, and there are other places that have taped matches in front of no fans and all that, but just having that live interaction, that instant feedback, that's what makes this business so special.
It's been hard over here for the fans and the talent and the guys that do it as a full-time job, but not having anything over here. State to state over there has been shows, as you say, but it's gonna be a different beast over here again once they can run, because our independent scene, I'm sure you're aware of it, for many years has been thriving. It's one of the hottest areas worldwide. It's just crazy. But I feel for the guys. I feel for the guys who've had, there's been a lot of issues with mental health, some of the workers, but I think there'll be a newfound appreciation, especially over here in the UK, when you go to a show and for workers and the crowd as well.
Absolutely, and for those during this past year, some people have gotten creative in developing their characters and all that, because what you can do bell to bell in the ring, there's a lot of people out there that can surpass what I can do. But it all comes down to what makes you special. It's your persona. So if it's doing things like Cameo or, little promos on Twitter, things like that, that show, who you are and what gravitates people towards you. That's what professional wrestling is about. Like I didn't get into professional wrestling because of like Stone Cold Steve Austin, doing stunners and all that. That's my favorite, by the way. I gravitated towards him because of how he spoke, of what he did, his promos, flipping Mr. McMahon the middle bird, the beer drinking, all that good stuff. It was those intangibles of what he did that pulled me in. And that's what I think that other people know, subconsciously or not, that there are aspects about a performer that gravitates them to them. And that's what's so important when you get onto that bigger stage, is that persona part of you. We can recite Hulk Hogan promos, Macho Man promos, Steve Austin, whoever, those are the ones in the conversation. So I think that those that have really taken Twitter or online the past year to develop their persona, they are where they are now because of that.
I think this is perfect to segue back to you and the Bachelor gimmick that you portray. How did that come about? I actually said to you a few months, maybe 2-3 months ago on Wrestling Travel, about Angel Garza stole the gimmick with the rose. That I said, just get a bouquet for the ladies instead.
That's right, and I do believe I said on there, like, hey, who taught him that? No, but I don't know, and that's something that like people are like, oh man, they stole that. There's hardly anything original in wrestling. You know what I mean? Like if I see little aspects of that on TV, I'm not gonna be offended. It's a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a compliment. Whether they did directly steal it from me or not, whatever.
It's like Scott Putski said to me. Sorry, Ben. It's like Scott Putski said to me, everyone's stealing shit from everybody. Nobody's reinventing the wheel, because it's been done. Things have been done time and time again. It's just how it is, isn't it?
Yep. And plus too, it's like, I'm the guy that's been doing it the past, couple years, like I don't think he's been doing it now, but no. So like how it developed was that, for the first several years of my career, I was Big Bear Benjamin Boone. And it was my way of trying to be like an Austin, like a Rhino, like those influences. But it wasn't totally me. I was just a guy on the card. And I hit this point in my career about 5 years ago where all of a sudden my run with, like the Iron Curtain, things like that, it ran its course. And I really wasn't wrestling a whole lot. So it was time to reinvent myself. It was just that time. So I started going to Bachelor auditions, like for the television show around the area, like in Cleveland and Detroit. And I took to social media to say like, hey, like, tweet at ABC to include, Benjamin Boone as part of, Bachelorette and all that. And it was Gregory Iron who reached out to me and said like, hey, I don't know what you're doing with these auditions, but if you're smart, you would develop that into your persona, into your character. And that was the light bulb moment that I needed. So I was starting to figure out ways to totally reinvent myself in terms of my style, my approach, my character, my promos, things like that, so I got to do play around some promos I did. The gear that I wore was nicely provided by Madman Fulton, who did he did a character in NXT, and he had like the single strap tuxedo that he gave to me, and we worked out an arrangement of me returning the favor for his generosity. So everything just fell into place like very quickly for that. And being able to come out with the rose as an identity. I've always been a prop guy, so having something that you come out with as whether a prop, something that you could use in a match, or something that you can give away, like Bret Hart with the glasses, that was part of his persona because he would take them off and give them to a kid. That was, I took that as inspiration. If I'm a babyface, if I come off the rose, I give it to to somebody. If I'm a heel, I'm a jerk about it. The music, I think that came pretty quickly. The Seal "Kissed by a Rose" because it's an instantly recognizable song.
Absolutely. It was on Batman Forever as well.
That's right. An underrated gem of film, and nobody hates it. Nobody hates it.
It's a tune, man. I'm telling you. Someone did a cover. I've seen it on Spotify, like a rock cover. I'm forgetting. Sorry, I'm jumping in here.
No, you're fine. Yeah. No, you're fine. Like the rock cover, but like I want the true blue version, because everybody comes out to either rock or rap, so it's like, no, screw that. If I'm the Bachelor, I'm coming out to this, and I'm making my entrance a performance, which is something that, some guys can do, but that's us. What I thought was a lost art of, making your entrance part of the show. Like Shane Strickland, coming out to Shaka Khan, ain't nobody, that was part of his entrance on the Independence, and that establishes the mood of who you are. Even if you have a match and the fans don't remember a thing about it, they remember the entrance. And there were, from my peers, some, hesitation, one of which, Rhino, he took me under his wing. He really helped in getting my name out there. Really, helping pick his brain about etiquette and psychology of the business. He was not sold on it. I remember being backstage at a show in Pittsburgh, and he came up to me and said, like, man, like, I don't get the Bachelor gimmick. I think that it's something that's not going to get over. And I made it work, so like, and he'll still call me up asking for a rose. So
he liked it deep down.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, so if I was able to, like, change his opinion on it, then I was able to, get that across. And if I'm able to explain it to somebody that doesn't know wrestling and they say The Bachelor, they instantly know what it is. So there is that instant connection.
That's perfect. No, hey, that's it, man. It polarizes wrestling. That's what you want, Mark. So I think now would be a good time to talk about Skull and Bones as assistant trainer, and you're there with Crimson and Trey Miguel, two great talents. So how's that been? How's that been training the stars of tomorrow? How does it obviously differ to being a wrestler training the guys?
It's great to be like in that mentorship role, and being there when I can, that's why, like I'll be there, once or twice a week. But, Trey Miguel and, Crimson, they're the guys that they run the school. They're there 4 days a week, making sure the lights are kept on, the bills are being paid for it. And, and they themselves, Trey Miguel, he's world traveled, he's one of the main stars in Impact Wrestling. Crimson, CK3, he's been world traveled, and he's wrestled in every major promotion that there is. Provides that both together provide a wealth of knowledge, and they combine the old school and the new school approach to wrestling for tomorrow's stars. And then, people like myself, Ryan Castle, Dickie Bronson, and like I mentioned earlier, the Iron Manager, JT Davidson, to provide additional touches for, their in-ring work, footwork, transitions, like the persona part. It's Skull and Bones has gotten a lot of attention, just recently. Skull and Bones was featured on Impact Wrestling, and one of the students, Sam Beal, did have a match on there with his trainer, Trey Miguel. So you're seeing Skull and Bones, being promoted now.
Very prevalent.
And like I mentioned earlier, Alex Shelley, he's been stopping there to help with, Trey Miguel, and he's certainly, both he and Chris Sabin have have put over Skull and Bones on Twitter, online, and we've had people like Gregory Iron, we've had Rhino, other people doing seminars at the school, the Rascals, or MSK now, right before they signed with NXT, that people are stopping here now to help with their students, to promote the school. So I mean, it's a great feeling, man. I'm just a small part of it, but being able to help and provide whatever knowledge I can contribute to help the stars of tomorrow. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling, man. It's a great way of giving back. Ultimately, that should be the life cycle of the wrestler. Of when you start out, you're being provided wealth, knowledge. You're given the tools to go on, develop yourself, get yourself established, and then when things are right, you come back and you provide that knowledge to the next batch of talent. That's how it should be.
What would be your tips for guys that are going to be getting into the business? Benjamin Boone's tips for these young trainees that are coming through.
First and foremost, I would say definitely have the funds to provide your dream possible, because wrestling schools, they do cost money. So you need to have money, set aside to make sure that you can put, money down and then pay every month to continue your dream. Find a gym, because you do need to be athletic. You do need to be in shape to be a pro wrestler. So make sure you find a gym. And most gyms are $20 nowadays. So it's not that hard to to go to the gym and train hour and a half, 2 hours a day. Watch what you can. What made you love professional wrestling? Take what you love and make it a part of you. And watch what you can too, because now we live in a day and age where we have so much information. We just touched on it. Is it too much? I don't know, but there's a lot out there for you to watch, not just WWE, AEW, Impact, Ring of Honor, stuff on the independent, stuff in the UK, stuff in Australia, stuff all over the world, Japan, for you to pick and choose, write down. Also be reliable too, because that's a big aspect of this business is reliability. You could be the most talented person in the world, but if you have poor etiquette, if you have a poor mindset, you're not going to get very far. So making sure that you have a good mindset and being reliable. If you're gonna say you're gonna go to training, show up. Make sure that your vehicle's working. You know what I mean? Because here in the United States, the United States is a huge country. You could drive to Canada from here. Canada's only 45 minutes from my place. So, having a car and a license to get yourself up and around, and yes, your car's going to break down. So have insurance, have AAA here to make sure that if your car breaks down, that you can get it fixed. But most of all, have fun. This is your dream. This is your dream. So live your dream. I know it's become a cliche phrase of living the dream, but if you are living the dream, work towards your dream and make it happen. This ride, however long it lasts, few years, few decades, does not matter. These are going to be the most fun times of your life. So, just love every moment of camp, even the bad of it. You're gonna look back fondly, and you'll laugh and joke about if a promoter is being crappy to you, all that, like that'll come up, conversations, or doing car rides and getting to bond people. That's another thing too of the car. Just once you're in training and once you're doing matches, jump in the car with people. Pick and choose, talk wrestling. That's how you learn, is in the car. Talk about your matches, talk about where you think the business should go. I know I'm all over the place. I'm a very wordy guy. So, you can trim the fat of what I'm talking about, but, in short, make sure that you have the funds available. find a gym, reliable, have a good working car and a license, have fun. I put it on 4 fingers and 1 thumb. Look at that. So,
perfectly encompassed the tips from the Bachelor Benjamin Boone there. Ben, I'm going to ask you now, favourite matches, but I'm going to be quite stringent and say you've got to pick a top 3 matches all time. As a fan, as a wrestler, just, a top 3 matches off the top of your head that you love to watch still to this day.
The match that made me want to become a wrestler, Stone Cold versus The Rock, WrestleMania 17, Houston, Texas. That was the match that made me want to become a wrestler. Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 21. A dream match and a dream match that I think probably was executed so well. And I gotta say, man, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc, 1997. I don't work a cruiserweight style, but the way that they were able to work their cruiserweight spots and do it in such a great storytelling fashion just came off so beautifully. And I think that's the template of where you could trace where wrestling is now, is because of that match. And plus, Eddie Guerrero, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Even then in WCW, he was a cut above. I mean, he was just so good with his psychology and his persona. But yeah, that what I would say is my top 3, my friend.
You could hear Schiavone and Heenan all them years ago about Eddie, just the fondness for him even then. And I know he went over to WWF in 2000 with the Radicals, but yeah, just all them matches, they're timeless. You can put them on now; they still hold up today, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty when you can do a match like that. It's just incredible. Great list, by the way. Great list.
Thank you. Yep, and I know there's other matches. It's like, oh, what about this? But hey, you told me off the top of my head, so there you go.
You could do a top 100 like me. It's like when I get put on the spot. It's like when they say about a Mount Rushmore of wrestlers. I can't limit it to a Mount Rushmore because there have been so many different guys I've loved watching over the years, man. He's talking like 30 years watching wrestling just over now, and it's hard. You can't encapsulate it so short. It's so wide, it's so vast what we've been able to see over the years.
Right, and it's so subjective too, because your favorite wrestler is different from mine and from anybody else's.
Bret Hart, hands down for me though, when I'm asked. So absolutely. Ben, where can we find you in terms of social media? Where can we find the Bachelor Benjamin Boone?
You can find me at Benjamin Boone 1, BenjaminBoone 1, on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Cameo, so you can find Benjamin Boone on Cameo. I'm pretty close to maxed out on Facebook, but feel free to send me a friend request and or follow there. And ProWrestlingTees.com/Benjamin Boone. You can find all my designs from my Big Bear days to now with The Bachelor. So pick up a tee. I will gladly send you a very nice personalized email if you order from me. And those are ways that you can follow me and support me.
Is there anything in terms of shows coming up? Have you got any shows coming up? I know obviously a lot of the places are shut down still.
Yeah, so like I said, I had my first match back this past Saturday with Bruce City Wrestling. I'm back there on April 9th. And I have a couple more shows coming up. Heroes and Legends, that's going to be in late April. They're out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Heroesandlegends.com. So, yeah, I have a couple shows coming up in April. Things are reopening slowly. I'm still taking proper precautions as far as keeping myself safe and healthy during this pandemic, and the news of adults being qualified to vaccinate before the end of May here in the United States. When I get that letter saying I can get it, I will get it, because I do want to get back on the road. I do want to travel internationally. Give my roses away to find people, outside the United States, because they deserve it too.
My guest, all the way from Toledo, Ohio. My first guest from Ohio, actually. We're nearly on 80 episodes. It's the Bachelor Benjamin Boone, trainer at the Skull and Bones Pro Wrestling Academy with Crimson and Trey Miguel. Absolute pleasure having you on Stu's Wrestling Podcast today. Really enjoyed it.
Stewie, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to be back, and we can do this again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. This episode is brought to you in association with Powered 4 TV, so go and check them out for anything wrestling related, old events, new events when we come out of COVID, podcasts, you name it, it's all there at Powered 4 TV, so find them across social media.